Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is Allan Duquette, technical writer at Proposify, a tool that helps you write and design stunning proposal documents, collaborate with team members, and keep track of new business you pitch. So welcome, Allan, to Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So let's get started with our questions now. So just to get everything into context, please explain yourself a bit more, Allan, and of course your nature of business in a bit more easy words.
That's great. So I'm the technical writer here, so I tend to write the knowledge base articles as well as the release notes, and have more of an educational role as well within the organization. I try to make all of my stuff a little bit funny and quirky, as much as it annoys some of the other people around, but it's definitely come through. I've had some experience writing and drawing comics, so I do tend to bring an illustrative style to a lot of my work as well.
Fantastic. So how did you get initially into documentation?
Well, I started out at the support team here at Proposify, and I moved up from there. So we had some save replies that often had long bits of text with an image that was only related to half the text. And we found that a lot of the people were just skimming to the image and then asking follow-up questions that were already in the main paragraph. So I started breaking those down into more of an illustrative guide. So multiple screenshots, short sentences in between. And they found that my work was resolving conversations a lot faster. So I was moved into the knowledge base because of that, and certainly not because of my customer support skills. They were described favorably as concise and less favorably as abrupt.
Fantastic. That's really good to know. So what can you describe as your documentation process? And you did explain slightly the different teams you might get involved. Can you help us understand a bit more?
Sure. So I have 5 stages in the process. So the first is the outline. When a new feature is just getting started, I interview the product and the developer team to get as much documentation that they've written as I can. And that way I can avoid asking a whole bunch of redundant questions. I can just look it up from there. Once I have all of that stuff, I go through the knowledge base and I find everything that this new feature may affect. And then I mark things for patches or rewrites, or if I have to write something new, then I mark that. I submit that back to the product and the dev team to make sure that this is what they're looking for. And then after that, I move to the draft stage. From drafting, I just write, patch, get everything done. Tends to be the shortest amount of work. And then after that, it's submitted for review. And I get all of the feedback from the developers and the product team. The developers, I look for technical accuracy to make sure I'm not giving out any explicit lies. And for the product team, I'm making sure that the workflow that I'm specifying is exactly what they're thinking as well. After that, then it goes to the preparation stage. So this is usually around the time when the feature is reaching staging. I replace all of the screenshots from the onboarding docs straight into from the staging, and make sure that everything looks perfect. And then after that, it's the final step, which is publishing, and just making sure that everything is following up great and that it all matches.
Fantastic. Wow, that's a very, very structured way of getting good documentation. So that all clearly shows how much of importance you give to documentation. So what are you, according to you, what do you think are the important factors that you would consider when creating documentation for your SaaS business?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that no one actually wants to read what I'm writing. If they are reading it, then that means that they have a problem that they've come across and they're pressed for time. They have a deadline and they just need to get the thing done. So the major factor that I come into when writing an article is setting up the ways that user can easily navigate to find the answer that they're looking for. I start at the beginning with the table of contents. I finish at the end with a related reading if they didn't find what they're looking for. And I make sure that everything that is in between there is very skimmable, including lots of very illustrative approaches to that.
Great. Nice. It's a very good way of measuring the documentation as well. So when it comes to your customer service or success strategy, what role do you think your documentation plays?
Oh, well, that role is pretty broad. So it is a point of reference and support for people who are users of our product, as well as for our sales team when they're prospecting, making sure that when our workflow will match with the prospect, as well as if right now with our dev release cycle, sometimes our developers and product teams will spend months working on a particular feature, and then they'll move to another portion of the product. This means that they have to brush up on exactly how that currently works, what the pain points are, and how they can improve upon it. In our support team, they are incredibly experienced and great people, but our app is pretty big and has a lot of features in it. So sometimes they need help with getting back up to speed on a particular feature in order to answer a question.
Super. So I'm sure you might be able to give me a good answer for this question, because so far what you've given me is very promising. So what kind of reduction in workload have you seen since introducing quality documentation?
I would say the last time I measured was that I saved each support team member about 2 weeks of work within 90 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
so that...
It was around 88 hours saved for each operator based off of just automatic redirects from our software to the knowledge base.
All right. To be really honest, Allan, many of my presenters in the past, you might also see from the podcasts I've done, have struggled to give a direct answer to this question. And it's that nature of the profile as well, isn't it? You can't take credit for having a good documentation because you can't measure directly. But what you've said is like bang on.
Yeah, it's really hard to measure quality as well, or to see exactly where your impact is, just because a lot of the people who are reading my documents aren't necessarily the customers, but also just people within the organization who I'm not really thinking about.
Yes, fantastic. So how do you measure the quality of your documentation? Of course, your previous answer kind of answers this partially, but do you have a level of measurement to say, yes, this is good, and you need further improvements for certain articles or categories?
I've tried. It's kind of difficult. We have a measurement. We have a CSAT score at the bottom of every article, just saying, is this useful? Yes, no. If you say no, then it opens up a support chat box where you can reach out to one of our support team and get the answer that you're looking for. I found that that's not a particularly useful measurement, because if you get the answer that you want, you're not going to scroll to the bottom and click yes. Typically, you're just going to go back to work. Our the salespeople who are using our software are on a time crunch, and they're focused on the task at hand. So when I find all of the no's, for one, the goal is not to be discouraged, but the second is to try to find patterns in it. Are they asking the same question? Are they asking a question that's already in the document? And if they are, then why aren't they getting that answer? From there, then I have to tailor and either rewrite the topic itself, add new topics, or just start from scratch. And also, I'm constantly asking for just as brutal feedback as I can get from our dev and engineering teams, and our project teams. The more brutal that they get, the better that I can improve. And I'm always disappointed when I see, that looks great.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So just out of curiosity, how many years have you been writing documents? Have you been in this profession?
I've been in this profession specifically for 2 years, but I found the more that I looked at it that I've been kind of on and off on the instructional side of things for at least 10. Usually I was training or setting processes for other places. And then even when I was doing comics, I was doing a lot of storytelling based work, which is just mainly just, telling like piece by piece by piece how to get from point A to point B. It's just that those people weren't real.
Yeah, I think all those experiences, what is kind of shaping, is helping you now, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Great. So I'm sure you must be generating some organic search traffic from your knowledge base. So are you currently doing it?
That's hard for me to tell. I'm kind of backing away from the SEO mindset on things. Our current solution is also kind of limited on the kind of SEO traffic. So we are looking at kind of expanding that in the future. But that's something that I'm definitely I'm leaving that to our marketing chief to look at and make sure that I'm doing the best I can with it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So that's something that you're going to be exploring in future.
Absolutely.
All right. Great. So is there anything else you want to add, Allan, before I move on to the rapid fire round?
Well, I think the main thing is I would always like to, I'm always willing and able on the Write the Docs community to talk about kind of the using screenshots and graphic illustration in order to improve your knowledge base.
Okay, super. So let's move on to the rapid fire round. So who have you learned the most about documentation in your career?
Definitely the Write the Docs community on Slack. They are, it is full of people from a wide range of industries and experience, all answering the exact same questions, like, should you have jokes and release notes? Or what's the proper grammar type? It's been great following up with those communities, and I've definitely learned a lot from all of them.
Super. So, yep, we've got a similar answer from a lot of our previous authors as well. So, can you share a documentation-related resource you recently consumed?
Oh, absolutely. So I worked with Daryl White in the Write the Docs community to help facilitate a book club. When we recently spent a month of reading The Product is Docs by the Splunk team. And it was a very useful experience. I definitely learned a lot based off of that, not just from the book itself, but from the contributions from other people.
Super. So fantastic. So what's that one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Oh, that's easy. Go to college for this. I an English and philosophy major in university and an advertising major in college was all great, but really playing catch up in my 30s has been a struggle. It's exhausting. So yeah, go to college for this.
That's a different answer I've got so far. Great. So I think we are almost at the end of our podcast now. So any other experience you want to share, unique ideas or thoughts with the audience?
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to doing your screenshots, always try to figure out the eye flow. And so figure out where the eye is going to start, usually at the top left if you're a left to right language native, or top right if you're a right to left language native, and try to guide the eye to where you want it to go. As well, you want to make sure that when you're doing step-by-step guides, that you start with it's called the establishing shot, showing the exact frame of where they will be working, and then zoom in when you're starting to break down. So that way, and you always want to make sure that there is a frame of reference between the element that you want to guide them to and everything around it. That way the button that you are pointing them to may look very pretty, but if that's all they're seeing, they're not going to know where it's located. And finally, when you're looking at doing step-by-step guides using screenshots and illustrations, you want to make sure that all of the things have a specific flow. So when you're looking at comic books, the person who, when Superman is changing from Clark Kent to Superman, he's never just in a suit and then suddenly outside of the suit. He's always transitioning from that state to the next. That way people know that, okay, he didn't just magically teleport out of his suit. And the same way should go for your screenshots. You should always make sure that everything is a step-by-step and that you are showing or at least hinting at the next stage in the process during that illustration.
Very nice. I think it will be one of the most useful tip that anyone could get, Allan. So thank you once again for sharing that. And of course, your whole journey, how you got into documentation and your initial experience with writing comics and your designing of characters is definitely very, very useful to us, to our audience. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gauri.
Thank you, Allan. Yeah, have a very good day. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.